So first we're going to talk about the seasons of the year and how seasonal training and our transformation cycle works into the seasons of the year and just society in general and the activities we engage in. And then we'll look at, the example of a new mom and in and out of having kids and what that looks like, and see if we can find the happy medium between the two, right? And what's going to give you the best results and help you to do what we call training with momentum. And we mean training with momentum because that's really what we're doing, is we're driving the best results by training for our goals while also making sure that we're training in a time and season in our lives that it makes the most sense for us. Okay, so here we go, take some notes, let's break it down. So seasonal training in the fall is usually where we start. You've heard me mention in previous videos that we like to enter a bulking or a strength training phase in the fall. Now, if we think about the fall, no matter where you are, we live in Texas, my family's from New Hampshire, or whether you're in Utah somewhere, you experience different seasons of the year, but overall we tend to do a lot of the same things. For the first time, we start bundling up in clothes, we're wearing pants, longer sleeves, sometimes it's colder out, right? Because of that, we're not always quite as focused or worried about, our body shape at that time, right? So during a bulking phase or a get strong phase sometimes can be a little more optimal to get into, because those who've been training for a long time, you usually tend to put on just a very small amount of body fat when you're in a bulking phase because you're in a calorie surplus like we've talked about before. And we'll talk about a little bit more when we get into the macros section. Now, as we do that, so in the fall, as we think about being in a calorie surplus, we also think about the foods that tend to be available in the fall, right? So we tend to be eating soups and chilies and casseroles and squashes and whatever foods are available at that time. And those tend to be some of these thicker, more hearty, filling, sustaining foods that can make it easier to be in a calorie surplus and maintain enough protein in our diet and lifestyle, right? We tend to have more meats and just overall warmer foods, and the warmer foods naturally are higher in calories. And so it makes more sense for us to be in a bulking phase when we're in a calorie surplus in the fall / kind of entering winter period, right? So because of that, fall tends to be the best time to be in a bulk phase, and that's how that training cycle fits in. The next one is winter. Winter fits in because, so winter is kind of where we sometimes like to hang out in a maintenance phase for the holidays, right? For Thanksgiving, for Christmas, just for like those 2 months, because it's really hard to be in a certain phase of training during the holidays because you're usually out with friends, there's lots of food, lots of treats that are higher in calories, higher in sugar content, makes it difficult to hit your macros. By the way, we made a, Flourish, like a holiday survival guide basically on how you can work through the holidays with your macros to help you break it down so you don't gain weight, so you don't sacrifice good foods, so you can still have a good time, but also feel good that you're not going to be losing any progress during the holidays. All right, so go check that out. That's in the link in our bio on Instagram. But besides that, we've made it through the holidays. It's New Year's. This is the winter challenge, right? This is the best time for us to be in a recomp. Okay, so in a recomp phase, your calories are either going to be at maintenance or they're going to be in a slight deficit. This is great because you're not putting yourself in extremes, but society has also taught us to make New Year's resolutions. You're finally ready to recommit hard to a program. And so jumping into a slight calorie deficit, which is a little challenging, but it's not overwhelming, so you don't fall off the wagon quickly, which most people do on a New Year's resolution, right? We want to make sure that you enter into that phase of training with momentum. We're going to take that hype, we're going to rev it up. You're going to jump into a lot of muscular endurance type of training. And so that usually tends to be a really great time for you to try and get the best of both worlds, which is gaining strength and putting on some muscle mass while also losing some body fat. And now naturally, again, like I've said before, if you've never entered these training phases before, whether you start in a recomp or if you start in a bulking track, then you're going to lose some body fat because you're increasing your metabolism. You're going to start burning a lot more calories than your body's used to. Naturally, you're going to see some good transformation really quickly. The way that the winter challenge gives us momentum in the recomposition phase is the fact that now that things are starting back up, we're getting back into a regular schedule, where kids are going back to school. We're also preparing for the spring. And the spring is a great time that we go into a cut phase. And so transitioning from a recomp into a cut is a lot easier if we start working on the recomp come New Year's. All right. Other foods become available that tend to be slightly lighter, but we're still eating relatively heavier type of warmer foods. That's kind of what's in season still. So it doesn't make sense to be in a fat loss phase in the winter, or at least sometimes it can be more difficult. Now, no matter what phase you're in or what time of year it is, it does not mean that you are restricted to a certain phase of training. This is usually just what we recommend because we want to help you train with momentum and we want to help you get the best transformation possible. And so the seasons of the year are actually designed for our progress and for us to be able to transform our bodies the way that we want to. As well as just kind of the activities of society. It happens to match up perfectly. That's why we created this transformation cycle. That leads us to the spring. So the spring, finally lighter type of cooler temperature foods are getting back in season. That is extremely helpful for us because it helps us to eat a little bit lighter and a little bit more of these fresh, lighter vegetables and fruits. We don't have to take in as many calories because naturally we're trying to be cooler, right? So these big, hot, thick foods, as it starts to get warmer, are not as appetizing because we don't want to get warmer as the climate is warming us up. We're starting to wear shorts again. We're starting to wear t-shirts. So naturally we will want to have lost some of that body fat that we might have gained during the holidays or the bulking season, right? So it's a really great time to enter that fat loss phase as we prepare for summer because we want to be able to have lost a lot of weight during the late spring so that when we're going to the beaches and the pools and all that jazz, when we're wearing swimsuits, we feel good in our clothes. We feel like we look good in our clothes and we're not too afraid to, for lack of better terms, show some skin when we're hanging out in the summer because we've already been through the bulk, the recomp, and the fat loss phase in preparation for this, right? So just activities of society, again, this leads us perfectly into the summer. The summer phase is usually when we recommend a little bit of a maintenance before fall comes because you've worked really hard for almost a full year. During the summer, you're usually traveling, you are doing all sorts of activities, the kids are out of school. It's easier to be in a maintenance where you're just trying to get your body at this set point, be happy with the transformation that you've gotten and be able to stay there and maintain it so that you can continue to enjoy your activities. You can go on your vacations, still find a successful way to eat within balance during the summer. Plus you're naturally eating those lighter, cooler foods that we already talked about, but not having to stress too much about killing yourself on getting those macros right, going hard in the gym, right? You can kind of start really trimming out and figuring out what kind of niches of your training you need to focus on in order to drive the results that you want. And that really helps prepare you, gives you the mental break so that you can be ready to jump into a bulking phase again in the fall. So that's how it works with the seasons. It's not that difficult. Again, disclaimer, you are not required and nor does it always make sense for you to be in those training phases for each season of the year. In fact, me and Megan don't always follow that. We do sometimes. It just depends on what's going on in our lives, how, one was, for Megan especially, like what phase of life she's in between having kids, because that's kind of what we're going through right now, and then what makes most sense for me and my goals and what I want out of my transformation. And so that's going to be different from you, and we realize that, but we wanted to paint this picture of seasonal training throughout the year so that if you're able to match these things up, it's great because it helps you train with momentum and really helps you dial in the transformation you've always wanted.